welcome you back to another episode of Beyond the Dirt podcast. Today we got something a little bit different. We were able to sit down with the Upper Mississippi River Basin Initiative and have a little Zoom meeting with them. And so we recorded it all and hope that we can turn this into a podcast. So hope you guys enjoy. A lot of great content to come, a lot of great topics discussed in this. So thanks for listening.
Having us on here. My name's Hunter Slifka. I'm the Turkey River Headwaters and Chiac Creek Watershed Project Coordinator. And so my project location lies completely in Howard County. It encompasses kind of the south half of Cresco and then works its way kind of south and west. And we'll pull up a map of it as we start getting a little further in the presentation.
And I'm Neil Schaefer. I'm the project coordinator for the Silver Creek Watershed Project. It's a 319 Iowa DNR funded project. We get our original funding from the EPA. My project's been on the books for about 13 years now, and we'll kind of disclose a bit about what we've accomplished in the PowerPoint. But just wonderful to have the opportunity once again to reach your audience and to share what we're doing and hopefully inspire others across Iowa, the Midwest, and the nation to do the same thing that what we're doing. And it takes a few people with that spark to really get things rolling. And what we're hoping to do is ignite some of those sparks tonight. So as far as the Silver Creek Watershed, we're located in northeast Iowa, right up near the Minnesota border. The interesting thing about Howard County is we're the headwaters of three major rivers in Iowa. The Upper Iowa River begins just on the Minnesota border and runs across the northern part of Howard County, and that's where the Silver Creek is a 22,000 acre watershed in the Upper Iowa River watershed. Hunter's project, the Turkey River headwaters, is at the top end of the Turkey River, and we also on the western side of the county are the beginning of the Wapsie-Pinnakin River. So it's kind of nice. We always say we're working to keep the water clean at the top and work our way down. So we're doing our best to send that water down the river in its best condition as possible. To date, since 2013, over $9 million has been invested in my watershed, and that includes both landowner contributions, the cost share that we have for the different practices. And what we're really proud of in Silver Creek is this last fall we exceeded 55%. So 55.5% of the watershed row crop was seeded to cover crops. And I believe 2 years ago when I was on here, we were about 33%. So and the year before, we went from 33% to about 46%. So my goal was to hit 50%, and we far exceeded that. And we'll discuss a little bit how we did that as the evening progresses. But I would say that was my highlight of the year was getting to that amazing number.
I seen Christine, you had your hand up. Did you have a question?
No, I was clapping.
Awesome. Well, we'll keep it as formal as there is. So if there are some questions that come in the chat, we can't see the chat, but if one of you guys want to put your hands up so we know and we can try to hit those as we go along.
So in the Silver Creek watershed, to be eligible for an EPA Iowa DNR 319, we have to have a goal and an impairment. The impairment for the Silver Creek watershed was to reduce bacteria levels. We had E. coli levels that were very high. E. coli comes from wildlife, livestock, and faulty septic systems. So being that the Silver Creek is a tributary to the Upper Iowa, which is it's one of the top nationwide destinations for kayaking, tubing, fishing. So a lot of real close contact. That's very important to try to get those bacteria levels down.
So the Turkey River Headwaters Project, that's a project I'm working on. We're currently starting our third year of the actual implementation project. We had a couple of planning grants beforehand where we gathered all the research and the data and that sort of thing. And so now we're in the full implementation here project. And coming into June, we'll complete that third year and then write for an extension for another 3 years. And so my watershed is about 3 times the size of Neil's. We wanted to include 3 separate Huck 12 sub watersheds so we can incorporate that whole Turkey River headwaters area in Howard County, and try to include as much as we could. This also includes, if you guys are familiar with Cresco or Howard County, the Verdon Springs impoundment and fish ladder. Previously, there was a Lowhead Dam there, and it took on some damage from the flood of 2008. And so, with some funding from the DNR, they actually went and kept the Lowhead Dam, but implemented a fish ladder structure, which has significantly improved the fisheries and the water quality, both above and below. And this time of year, when you got a nice flow of water, it's just absolutely stunning to be able to see that. In less than 3 years now, we spent nearly $5 million in conservation. And so you got to kind of scale it to Neil's project. It's about half what he spent, but it's also 3 times the size of the watershed. And so just try to take that in scale, but definitely having 2 watershed projects, it gives us a great feel of competition and kind of trying to edge each other and stuff like that. So it makes it a little in-house fun as we go forward with our different projects and practices. Our goals when we first started the project, we wanted to kind of stay with the Iowa nutrient reduction strategy. And so these basically go right along with that, with your reducing nitrates and phosphorus and sediments. And then we also wanted to be at the very top of the watershed, reduce that peak discharge. And so infiltrating as much as that water as we can, slowing that water down as we get those large rain events, so we can put those below communities in the best foot possible when that rain's coming down and the flood events are beginning. So I know a lot of you guys were on here a couple of years ago and seen what we had done, but since then we've definitely done a lot of really good projects, and I'll just talk on this one real quick. Our stream bank stabilization. 6 years ago, we probably had 3 or 4 of these projects that had been completed in the county. Since then, we've had over 25 projects and over 25,000 feet of stream bank installed. Now, you definitely could put a lot more in if we wanted to hit every single curve and every single harsh bank, but we would be out there 24/7 surveying and trying to get those projects funded. And so when we go out to a project, obviously there's a lot of not good banks, but there's a lot of really bad banks. And so we try to really focus on the most severe ones and the ones that are affecting what are really affecting the farmer's goals or that landowner's goals. And so we do a couple different things. When we are trying to stabilize these banks, we kind of have 2 different options. If we see some really, really tall banks, like over 6 foot high, that are completely sheer banks, we do what they call longitudinal peak stone, which is basically using what slope's already there, putting a windrow of rock, and then backfilling behind it. And so it's kind of against the different traditional stream bank stabilization, where the traditional would be what you see in that bottom right picture, using a 2-to-1 or a 4-to-1 slope, putting that rock right at the water's edge there. And we're only putting about rock 2 foot above the water line. And then from then on is just that coir fabric with a really good native seeding. And so we're really trying to reduce the amount of rock that we're using to keep costs down, so we can get multiple projects funded and make that money go a lot longer ways. Another thing that we've been implementing with these projects to help with the different funding pools is implementing fish habitat structures. So like our vortex weirs, our J hooks, boulder clusters, our root wads are really popular. And so incorporating these help us get more points. It also helps our fish habitat, amphibians, reptiles, and all those different kinds of things. We mainly use EQIP funding. There's a couple different pots. We have our EQIP Riverine funding, and then we have a couple different RCPP pots. One's a Turkey River based pot, and another one's a driftless area. And so that driftless area has some special funding that we've been able to utilize these last few years.
The nice thing about what we're doing with this kind of a revamped idea of design, this looks much more natural. I'm sure you've seen the areas where you've got the riprap from the water's edge all the way to the top of the bank. Here we're still armoring, protecting that bank, we're putting soil over the top of some of the rock, that 2 foot that's above the water, and then putting native grasses along that. It looks much more natural, and we're still doing the same practice, and we're doing it for half the cost. And the rock is the main cost and placing that rock, and we've been able to do as much armoring as possible with half the expense.
I think one thing that probably has helped us with as much success as we had to get these projects funding is we go out and do all the IAE with our area engineer, kind of give us the go ahead. We then go forth and do all the surveying ourselves. We do all the permitting ourselves. We do all the designs ourselves. The area office still has to check our plans, but we're the ones that are in the stream doing all the surveys and all the legwork and that sort of stuff, rather than just going out, getting these applications and handing them off to those guys and making them do the workload. We're taking it upon ourselves. Since they are our projects, we want to take care of them and do as much as we can with these before we hand them off for funding.
Like I said, with the reductions in bacteria, one of the main things with the 319 funding that I received from the Iowa DNR is to help livestock producers. We have 2 large dairy producers in my actually three large dairy producers in my watershed, and probably a good dozen beef producers. We have 1 hog swine producer. But what's amazing about this is you'll talk to the landowners and when we're doing these projects, and we want to keep livestock in Iowa. We want to do production agriculture, but we want to do it in an environmental friendly way. And every one of these people say, if it wouldn't have been for what we're doing and helping them with this, offsetting the costs, there's no way that they would be able to do these amazing practices. And in this instance, you just look at the size of this. It's over 250,000 cubic feet of storage. This individual has a dairy barn with about 350 dairy cows in it, and the manure from that is stored. We have over 6 months of storage, so we're not putting manure on frozen ground anymore. We're applying it in the spring and fall. This is probably, I don't even think it's maybe a quarter mile from the trout stream. So originally when that landowner came to me, he called me on the weekend. He had a spill on his farm. It didn't reach the stream, but he said he couldn't sleep for the next 2 nights just worrying about what had happened. And this was the 3rd manure pit we've put on his farm storage area. He's got his heifers in one barn, he's got his cows in another, young stock. But it's like I said, if it wasn't for these programs, these farmers wouldn't be able to do this, and we would still have manure and manure being applied in the winter on the frozen ground. And so it's tremendous. And when we've invited the governor out to visit some of these sites, and we've had our Secretary of Agriculture out to visit them, and what I always have the farmer talk to them and explain how, and they're very thankful for the assistance, because they would not be able to have dairy. I mean, dairy has really been going by the wayside. So many people have gotten out of it. But at least what we're doing here is helping them do it in an environmental friendly way. All this money is rotating back into the community, and we're cleaning our water.
Our critical area native prairie establishments. So this is basically our CRP program. Howard County has been very active in the CRP program for a lot of years. To date, you can see there we have a little over 2,000 total CRP contracts, which is actually number 5 in the state right now. And then we have a little over 25,000 total acres. So it's not a lot of acres, but it's a lot of contracts with a lot of really pristine or really precision-based practices along those riparian zones, along those creek beds, those grass waterways. Don't get me wrong, we definitely have some really nice habitat areas that can encompass anywhere from 400 to 800 acres in some spots, of both multi-mixes of the pollinator like you see right here, along with some tall grasses. Food plots are starting to get incorporated a lot more. They actually just transitioned our CP38 program to a new seeding method where we're actually going to be splitting the seeding mix half as a tall, thick grasses and half of it as a short pollinator mix. And then they're also able to incorporate food plots with this. So it's not only going to have that nice rearing habitat for those pheasants in the springtime, but they're going to have that overwinter cover where they're able to hide from the predators and have that nice warm cover in the wintertime when we're getting a lot of snow and the harsh conditions and stuff like that. And then really placing those food plots in precise locations. There's a lot of thought that go into these, and it's not just a throw of a dart and hope we're putting them in the right spot. We're really calculating it out and making sure we're putting them in the right spots. And then probably one of the most important parts is we've been planning fire breaks on pretty much all of our CRP now, whether it's 5 acres, 10 acres, 100 acres. We've been planning fire breaks in there, sometimes more than necessary because these areas that are close to wooded areas, it's very easy for these woody vegetation to start encroaching in and giving us some problems with the CRP. And so the management side of the CRP has been really important to us. And we have a lot of fire departments in the area that do CRP controlled burns. And so it's a great fundraiser for them. It's making our habitat even more healthy than what it was previously. And it just really makes that connection with the landowner and their property even stronger at times when you're talking about the management and what they need to be doing through the years.
CRP is the best conservation practice funding source out there. We have over 30 different types of CRP, everything from windbreaks to grass waterways to wetland restorations. We have upland bird buffers, we have pollinators, we have the pheasant recovery, larger tracts. We've got the filter strips, the CP43 buffer strips program, where we can put strips through a field. A lot of study has been made. You could put 10% of a field in strips of prairie grasses and eliminate probably 90% of the erosion leaving that field. But the buffer strips along our streams, the grass waterways, I mean, give me a program that's harder to sell. It's 100% cost share now. So at the time of completing a seeding or a grass waterway program, you get 90% of the cost refunded to you in incentives. And then in the fourth year, we go back to make sure that this practice is living up to expectations, and they'll receive the remaining 10%. That's something new that's been added on. But talk about a lot of tools that have been added to our toolbox. So CRP is one of the first things we look at as far as when we go out to do a whole farm planning. Those waterways are like the infrastructure of they're the highways of your farm. Those concentrated flows of water. You fix the infrastructure of your farm. You take those wet areas out. You take out those areas. I was at a conference. 13% of all farmland has a negative return on investment. If we can get those areas that are not returning on the investment of inputs, put it into CRP, it's a win-win for everyone because you're not throwing money on poor ground and expecting a return on yield when we can go back to what Mother Nature had intended and farm with that. You know, I like to say, I coined the phrase, farm the best and buffer the rest. And it's very true. I mean, we can have both production agriculture and still do it in an environmental friendly way using a lot of these tools. And I can't say enough good things about CRP. I started 22 years ago with a grant from our local Pheasants Forever group, gave a $10,000 grant to our soil and water district. They went out looking for someone to sell CRP, and they knocked on my door. And not that I was looking to have a job or anything. I was dairy farming with my family, and I got started doing it and have fallen in love with it. And to this day, even with all the work I do in the watershed, CRP is still near and dear to my heart. Hunter works on it. We have a summer intern every year that works on it. So our soil and water district kind of take care of the CRP and let the NRCS federal staff work on the EQIP and the CSP, which we'll talk about here in a second. But talk about a great program, CRP. And obviously it shows. Howard County ranks 5th in the state. We were down in Des Moines last week talking with Alan Lang, who is on the national FSA CRP team, and then Kurt Gage, who's the head of the FSA. NRCS or FSA CRP in Iowa. And he said something, if you're number 5 in Iowa, you're probably number in the top 10 in the nation, because Iowa has so much CRP number of contracts. And I never thought of it that way. I mean, here what we're doing in Howard County, being in that top 5 in the state of Iowa, we're actually in the top 10 in the nation. And I've been working on this for 22 years. I never even thought of such a thing. So we're definitely working that program to the benefit of our farmers. Well, I might as well say my other favorite practice is grass waterways. We in 2022 we did 36.3 acres. In 2020, the year of COVID, when we weren't in the office as much, so we were out in the field a lot. So guess what? We flagged a lot of waterways and promoted that a lot. We did 110 farms with waterways that year, and that added to over 30 miles of waterways we constructed in 1 year. And like Hunter said, we get right in there and roll up our sleeves. This is something else that I've really enjoyed, to see the difference. If you've got a gully running across a field, that's 45 tons of soil erosion per acre. And by putting that grass waterway in, you reduce that from 45 tons per acre to 1 ton per acre. That's way below T-loss. And so it's probably one of the most beneficial as far as soil erosion and water quality that we have in our toolbox. And obviously this year we've got, right now we're working on just shy of 30 projects. So we're not going to run out. I thought we'd run out of doing waterways, and you're never going to run out. So.
Well, and what's nice about this program too is a lot of times when you're constructing a grass waterway, there's a foot gully or larger sometimes, and those farmers aren't able to plant into them and cross those waterways, and so it's really disconnecting their fields, making it harder for them to operate. And so being able to install these, shallow them up a little bit, take care of that gully, it's really reconnecting their whole farm back together and makes their farming operation work a whole lot smoother come planting and combine time. Cover crops. So we kind of hit on it before. I know Neil talked about his Silver Creek project, and I've never heard of a watershed project or an area ever having more than 50% or even sometimes up to 30% coverage of cover crops and row crop acres. And so that's on a whole nother level that I don't know anyone that'll get there for quite some time. So he's done a great job getting those farmers interested, and honestly, it's kind of the norm up in that watershed, and it's starting to transition to the other areas of the county now, where if you're not the one with green on your farm, you're kind of the outlier at this point. And this last fall, we ran into some issues trying to get timely rains, and so we didn't get as good of a catch as we had in past years. But nonetheless, this last week, you're really starting to see that green pop. And so these next 3-4 days, you're going to start to see a lot more of it pop, and you're going to see a lot of really good growth that's going to be able to take those early spring rains, which is really where we're aiming for. And so countywide, we had a little over 40,000 acres seeded down, which, if you calculate it out to the whole county, is about 16.5% of the county's row crop acres. And so that's pretty good, I think. In the Turkey River watershed myself, we seeded about 17,000 acres this year, which was just short of 25% of the watershed acres, or the row crop acres, I should say. And so what's really important with these cover crop contracts is we try to use CSP and EQIP as much as possible, which are those federal programs. They're multi-year contracts, anywhere from 3 to 5 year contracts. We can pair them with no-till to continue out to 5 years. And so it's really committing those folks to multiple years. It's not a 1 year deal where they have to plan for it. They're not sure if they're going to have funding for it in years to come. They're able to now plan for 3 to 5 years out, lock seed prices in, get what they need to, able to plan their operations a lot better. And it's worked out really, really well for us. And these federal programs are paying really good incentive rates and making it a fairly lucrative deal for these farmers. So,
well, what we're doing is changing the culture of conservation in Howard County. We're giving these people enough years to work with it to now it's becoming an accepted practice. And you're not going to, if you just do it 1 year at a time, well, there's two problems with doing it 1 year at a time. If you just do a 1 year contract, that means every year you got to go back to all these people and get them signed up, and that's a lot of work. So that's why we like these extended contracts. The other thing is maybe 1 year, like this last year, we didn't have as much moisture in the fall. People may think, well, we didn't really have as much luck with it. But there's so many things I want to say. I could honestly be on here for 3 hours. But one of the things with cover crops is that insurance policy, we're not going to have that fall tillage. They're out there, we're flying this stuff on, we're drilling it on. So right there, we've accomplished something by reducing that fall tillage to zilch. Now we've got that cover growing. But by having these multi-year contracts, we can get 500-600 acres signed up with Equip. Now we can go work with the next group of people to try to get them on board. And now we've got people that come to us and say, hey, my neighbor's doing cover crops. What do you have for me? So what we've been doing is Equip and CSP has a tremendous amount of money for it, but we still have a waiting list. So then we go to our state programs. We put them on the 1 year at a time, waiting to get funded by Equip. And what happened? So we've got people waiting in line to get cover crop incentives. So what happened this fall? I had about 3,000 acres of people in my watershed that actually I had a few more acres than that. We're waiting for funding. So I went to my Iowa DNR Section 319 people and I said, hey, I've got $75,000 sitting here in my ag waste funding. I don't have a project lined up for them, but I've got 3,000 acres of cover crop that could be planted this fall if I had funding. And I didn't go with an exorbitant rate. I went with $25 an acre, the same as what the state rate would be for a 1 year contract, but we did unlimited acres. I had one contract for 11 acres. I had one contract for about 600 acres. That was the largest one. Most of them were in that 50 to 150 acres. So we got those approval from my agency people in Des Moines. We got the money switched over, and Hunter and I went and hit the field, and we got those 3,000 acres signed up in about 3 days. This was like in September. We needed to have this stuff flown. We had the planes were flying, and yeah, I mean, it was amazing how quickly we got this done. So, we're still got. I think we've got more people to work with. We're working on a couple of Equip programs right now, and I think now, I'm 55.5% is pretty high, but I'm hoping maybe we can get to that 60% this coming year.
Yeah, I can only say this might be one of the only instances I can one up Neil, but when my watershed project got started 3 years ago, it was in a planning grant phase, and we took it on as if it was an implementation project. So we were putting practices out there. We were trying to leverage other programs, being I had no actual practice dollars through the program. And then that following year, we had a very large backlog of cover crop applicants. And I went and talked to my state people and said, hey, I need some money here. These folks can't get by with just 160 acre max. What can we do? He goes, well, I got $100,000 here for you. Use whatever you can. And if you need more, just let me know. I said, well, that's definitely not going to be enough. I said, we'll spend that 100 grand first, and then we'll go and look for some more money. And I think in 2 days, I had that 100 grand already obligated and already approved for the next seeding window. And then we went and got another $25,000 within the next couple weeks. So we got $125,000 worth of cover crops at the $25 an acre in about a 2.5 week window. So I can actually one time say one up Neil Schaefer.
Can you tell we've got a friendly rivalry? I mean, what a great competition to see who can put more conservation on the ground.
That's amazing. Chris Henning has her hand up. She may want to read a couple of questions because there's a few popping in the chat box that may be relevant to this current topic. Well, your whole topic this evening.
Okay, so I think that you probably answered indirectly most of these questions, but everybody's interested in how you coordinate the practices with your NRCS office, and how do you sell the opportunities to farmland owners? And I hear you saying you're not having any problem at all getting farmland people to do these practices. The business about planting cover crops in a rainy autumn and the alternatives. And I think the bottom line of this is more, it sounds like you're getting the funding. So do you believe that farmers would continue long-term without your support? Because it looks to me like you are doing multi-species, multi-year contracts. So they're already doing multi-year. They're signing up for multi-year.
Okay,
And
I'll answer that one. Yeah, that one.
yeah,
So that one about the will they continue? To get someone's behavior to change, they have to do this for multiple years. And this, by having those long-term contracts and having that funding in place, we're guaranteeing these people when they go back to buy their next planter, they're thinking, hey, I need a planter that's going to be able to plant into cover crops. Hey, I need a combine head that's going to work well with cover crops. So that they're doing it for those number of years, so that their whole their way of farming is changing. And to change habits, especially farmers. Farmers are the most independent group of people you're ever going to meet. And this is not easy. It's not a blanket one size fits all. We are tailor making this individually. Some people are strip tilling. Some people use the cover crop for forage for their animals, bale it, different things like that. So it's very tailor made. It's not a one shot covers it all, but they will, I believe, continue with this practice because it's going to take 5 to 7 years to realize the soil health benefits of the reduced tillage and the having that cover crop and having that structure built up in your soil. And I'm just amazed, and it's already happening because we had a lot of people that would do no-till beans into corn stalks, but they weren't quite comfortable enough doing no-till into corn into bean stubble. This last couple years, and we did a land use assessment in Silver Creek this last year, I'm amazed at how many people are already, hardly any people are doing tillage for soybeans anymore. They're almost all doing no-till soybeans into corn stalks. But the number of farmers planting corn no-till into bean stubble that has had cover crop on it is increasing also. So I think we're slowly changing that whole concept of how we farm, and it takes a while. And by having these incentives in place, and the federal government and the state government has made the water quality initiative and funding for carbon sequestration a priority, and those are the programs we have, and we're going to maximize them to the benefit of our farmers here, and to get those behaviors changed to where we're going to be using less tillage, and we're going to be using that cover crop and using the multiple effect of cover crop, not just the erosion, but the building of the structure and some of that stuff too.
And we have actually already had some firsthand experience with folks. What we try to do is we'll run them. A lot of these folks have ran through a state cost share program that first year getting started. Then we transition them into a single species EQIP contract. Then we get them into a 2-species EQIP contract. And then eventually into a multi-species, which is 3 or more CSP contract. And now we've actually ran into some folks who have already gone through this whole phase, now have no more funding programs that'll pick them up, and are continuing to do cover crops and no-till. And a lot of them have found that multi-species mix, and they've been able to hone it into their operation specifically to make it work exactly how they want it to. Whether it's the price of the seed, whether it's some of them are non-winter hardy, some are winter hardy, some have more forage benefits. It all kind of depends. But we have had some folks who either A, didn't get picked up and do it anyways, or they have some land that's in the watershed that got picked up and some that isn't, and they do all their acres, or they've gone through this whole process of these multi-year contracts, no longer eligible, and are continuing because they see those soil health benefits.
And what's really nice too is it's a step by step. So like kind of said, those first years with just cereal rye, and then so now take it up to the next level. We're going to do a multi-species, and we're going to do maybe we're going to fly it on where you are going to do corn grain. Maybe we're going to drill it on where you do harvest soybeans. Maybe we're going to use drones. We used drones for the first time this last year. and we were spreading radishes and winter camelina. So the types of cover crops and honing it in and just keeping their attention, like I said, to change the whole culture of how you're doing it is kind of a step by step. And obviously promotion, IDLES, Department of Agriculture in Iowa will give us these cover crop signs, so we're putting those up around. I ran into somebody that like, I never seen so much oats being planted. What are they gonna do with all this hay? And it's like, no, it's cover crops. It's just overwintering. So it's kind of a nice promotion. The other nice thing about what we're doing with this cover crop and those native grasses in my watershed, so I've got 55.5% of the row crop, corn and soybeans, is being having cover crops applied in the fall. We also have about 16% of our watershed now is in buffer strips along in grass waterways and those types of things in CRP. That means over 75% of the watershed has a living root year round. That's one of the major things about soil health is emulating the nature and having that living root. When we plant corn and soybeans, we've got to plant typically there from May until September, and then the rest of the year it's just dormant. There's nothing going on, and to keep that activity and microbiology going in the soil, to have those living roots. So that's huge too. That was something I was just sitting there one day thinking about that. And here we really have been emulating what's going on in nature on this production agriculture land.
So kind of taking a step back from the practices we've been installing, we are actually awarded a grant this summer to install creek signs. And initially, when we wrote the grant, it was just going to get the signs on for the Turkey River watershed. And somehow, some way, our cost estimates to the signs actually went down, which is kind of unheard of. And so we were able to then expand our area into the Silver Creek watershed and actually the whole county wide. And we're going to actually be able to install 77 signs here before July 1. And we've actually got a pretty good slug of them already installed and replaced with some older ones. So you can see the sign on the right side, the Silver Creek sign. That's what we'll be installing on the bridges. And so all the Turkey River, the tributaries, Silver Creek, some larger tributaries to the west in the county. And so it's going to really help these folks understand what water body they live by or what watershed they live in, and try to connect those folks to that land.
Because we did some community assessments and we asked people what a watershed is, and you should read some of the responses. They're quite humorous. But what Hunter said, it's connecting those people. If they realize when they're driving over that river, oh, wait a minute, that's Silver Creek, or that's the west branch of the Turkey River. That's all connected. That connects those people, not only to just drive over the road, but the people that live there. And then when they're farming in their fields, they're looking, they're crossing that bridge with their planter and their tractor. It's like, wait a minute, I'm in that Turkey River watershed. They're working on this project. What I'm doing out here is important for the quality of the river. And we did a signing project probably about 15 years ago. We got a grant and did a few signs. But with the help of Steve Hopkins with the Iowa DNR Section 319 program and the DOT and locally with our county engineer, Nick Rissman, he was very helpful. We got the signs. They ordered them for us. They're installing them all. They're going up right now. So that's another partnership that we added to our list. But it's so important to and Hunter's got the bioreactor sign right on Highway 9 on a heavily traveled road. We've got some wetland signs up. So making people aware of what we're doing, whether you're just driving through or you're living there, is making a huge difference.
So one thing we like to do is a lot of water monitoring, and obviously you can do a lot of good, you can put a lot of great practices in, but unless you're actually getting that documentation and collecting that data, you truly don't know if you're actually making a difference. And so we do water monitoring in our two watersheds. There's a total of 16 different sites. We do both in-field sampling, as you can see there in the picture on the left, as well as send bottle samples to Neil for Neil's project, the State Hygienic Lab. I send bottle samples down to Co College, and so we're able to then compare what we've done in the field as well as what they collect and analyze in the lab. We also put thermographs in, or water temperature monitors, in all our streams and our tributaries, to try to keep a baseline data and know what's going on in those streams. Neil's Watershed project, all his tributaries are cold water, and we're in the process of basically getting that flip switched, and getting them designated cold water. They have about 10 years worth of data that has proven that it's cold water. Not only the temperatures, but the vegetation within, and obviously the fish within the streams as well. The Turkey River watershed, on the other hand, we have a few tributaries, like Stone Creek and Cheock Creek, and a few smaller tributaries up in the upper reaches that could be potentially cold water streams. But the main branch of the Turkey River is obviously a warm water stream, where we're more focused on the sediment and the phosphorus and the nitrogen and stuff like that within the stream. But nonetheless, we love doing the water monitoring. It's a big expenditure on our half of the district. Our district pays for it all. We're able to go talk to other farmer groups. Our Howard County Experimental Farm has been gracious enough to give us donations every year that has covered the cost of all our materials and our needs for water sampling, as well as our thermographs that we went and purchased ourselves. And so without them, this would not be possible. We would continue on, have those multiple years of data and not having any lags in between, and be able to consistently keep that data moving.
Yeah, for whatever reason, funding for a lot of monitoring was cut a few years ago, and so we are like, well, okay, now funding's cut. We're going to find funding somewhere else. So, like Hunter said, we went kind of door to door, finding where we could find money, and our Howard County Experimental Farm, which is the board there, is made up a lot of the farmers who Hunter and I work with. So we were explaining to him. I said, hey, monitoring streams and water sampling is not a bad thing. It's a very good thing, because we're going to be able to show all the improvements that the farmers have done on their land is having a positive effect on the water. And if we're not keeping these monitoring going and having a steady, unbroken track of it, so, from April through October, we're monitoring every week. We're monitoring sites in Hunter's Turkey River watershed one week, and we're monitoring the sites in my watershed the next week. And Hunter does a fantastic job of putting together all that data, and he puts together a report, and we go to their January board meeting, and we say, hey, look at the improvements that the farmers have done on their land, and it's showing it. And that's so important, and that's how we're going to get continued public support, and that's how we're going to change the image of what farming is in the state. There's parts of the state that have some challenges going on, and there's no reason we can't be doing the same thing in all the counties in Iowa. But you got to have that data. And I know some counties, they kind of say, well, I guess we didn't get any money, we're not water monitoring anymore. And to get continued project support, funding grants for our projects, you have to have that data. You have to show improvements, and we are very good improvements, honestly.
So we've talked a lot about the practices and what we do, but this is ultimately how we get things done. And Chris, I think you were trying to ask the question as to maybe how you can get farmers to enroll their farmland, their highly productive soils, into conservation programs. And this is exactly it. It's the trust, it's the relationships that we've worked with and been able to establish with these local landowners of all kind of shades. And so we've really been able to work, and it's an open relationship that we have with them all. I mean, it's not a 8 to 4 job or a 9 to 5 job, whatever. I mean, it's around the clock. It's on weekends. It's when you're in the grocery store, sporting event, whatever it may be. You're always never knowing the opportunity may arise that a farmer or a landowner may come up with a question, and just being able to ease their mind or be able to provide that satisfaction to them and give them that good response so that they feel comfortable to come in. We've always mentioned when someone does come to the counter, it maybe is the third or fourth time they've come to town and thought about coming to the counter. And so it takes a lot of trust. It takes a lot of gusto on their part just to come on in the doors. And it's our job to really ease into it and make sure that we can do everything possible for them. I'm sure everyone has heard it that the customer is always right. And so that's kind of the mindset that we try to bring forward and try to enable them and do the best things possible with whatever their goals may be.
Well, I exactly. I mean, trust is it comes right down to that. That's how we are successful. We've built this trust up between our farmers and what we're doing. They trust us to give them a fair shake on the different programs. When I mean, I've honestly told farmers I wouldn't sign that contract. I don't think that's a very good deal. I think what you're expected to do and the outcome is not practical. There, you've gained trust right there. So they know that we're going to come to them with good, well thought out plans, conservation planning, and that not only works with the families that we work with, but also the contractors. Our contractors steer customers to us. Now, I don't want to brag, but there's a lot of counties where the contractors say, "Do not go near that government office. It's going to be a headache. It's just going to don't go there at all. It's going to cost you money." No, we've got a trust built up with all of our contractors. We've got a tremendous number. We've got about seven, eight earth moving contractors that build waterways and wetland ponds. We've got probably 6 or 7 people that do native drilling of prairie grasses and things. And they know that when they come to us, we're going to have a timely. We've got people that come in one day asking about a waterway. We're out there the next day walking the land with them. We bring our survey equipment with them, and we've got an application for them to sign. And we say, "You're going to get in this next funding round." So that's one thing, is being timely, building that trust, and building a trust so much so that even the contractors are on our, we couldn't do all this on our own. I don't know if you have anything on there as far as like number one in the federal programs, but we are like number one in the nation, or in Iowa, on EQIP and CSP, and we can't do this just Hunter and I. I mean, it's the other farmers that are doing it. It's the different contractors, and just the experience and repeat customers.
And obviously, you can see it, the partners. And Neil mentioned it. You can't do it with just us. And there's a lot of other folks not in our office that we really rely on heavily. I mean, obviously, with their CRP and the FSA agency right next door, we're over and back multiple times a day, as if they are as well. And there's a lot of things that we have to okay with them, they okay with us, and a lot of collaboration between us both before we even get that final product. And other ones such as like for Pheasants Forever. I mean, obviously all these are great partners, but like Pheasants Forever, we're both on the Pheasants Forever board. We work with the local habitat organizations. We're working with our county conservation board, the different programs out there, the DNR, fisheries, all those different kinds of.
We're on our local bike trails committee. We serve on that committee, the Prairie Trails Committee. So there was one question there about how do we get the NRCS to go along with us on this stuff. I guess I'm very good at. It's kind of like that old story with Tom Sawyer and painting the fence, and he tells them how much fun it is to paint that fence, and before long they're all out there painting the fence, and he's not doing a whole lot of work. Hunter and I are still doing a lot of work, but we always make our office atmosphere very lively and positive. We're always looking how we can do things. We're not always, I've always said we're the buffer between the farmer and the government program. These programs are not easy. They're complicated. They're constantly changing, and it's our job to keep on top of that. But it is, if you don't have that mindset of being positive and figuring out how we're going to get this done, you'll throw your hands up and say, "Oh, that program's too complicated. I'm not even going to suggest it to that farmer." No, we're going to figure out how are we going to make it work, and is there an easier way to do it? We've actually had impact on programs where they find out how we're doing it and they emulate that for other counties. Now, whether they do that or not, that's up to them. But that's how we get the NRCS on board, and we're willing to go out there and do a lot of that legwork. Like Hunter said, he helps the farm with all the permitting for the stream bank projects, which are EQIP. We help with getting the nutrient management plan people lined up to get their ag waste projects going. So it's one of those things. Get in there, roll up your sleeves, and work, and you will not believe how many people you're going to bring along to help you get that done.
So we talk about mentoring opportunities a lot, and I can speak on behalf of this one because I was in those shoes When I was in high school, I knew I wanted to do something outdoors. I thought maybe I wanted to be a CEO with the DNR or whatever it may be. And to be honest, I had no clue this even existed. And through Neil, he invited me in to come volunteer and check it out for a few days or an hour or whatever it may be. And instantly, I drew a love to it. I knew this is exactly what I wanted to do. Thankfully, I was already going to be going to school for that at college. And so starting out, I actually volunteered for 2 weeks before even being hired on. And just one thing led to another, and it all kind of worked out for me. But being able to have someone who shows you the ropes the right way. I'm on the Wrestling Hall of Fame board, and last night we had our Hall of Fame banquet, and one of the inductees said, there's two ways you can go. You can take the easy road, or you can take the hard road. The easy road leads to nothing, and the hard road is going to lead to something that's going to be successful or something that's going to be astonishing at some point. Whether that's a year, 5 years, 20 years, 50 years, you don't know that, but you just need to keep on down that hard road and keep your nose to the grindstone. And that's exactly what we did. I mean, we don't take the easy road. We definitely take the hard road. We're the ones out there. We're the ones doing the hard work. We're trying to do it the right way. And eventually you find some sort of a success or some sort of gratitude. And so I can speak on behalf of that firsthand. I was able to have some sort of an opportunity and take as much positive impact from that and make the most of it. And now being able to turn it around and give back and mentor other folks is exactly what we're trying to do. Because you always got to have someone that's going to reload or someone that's going to take your spot eventually. And so being able to train people the right way is extremely important, and make sure that they know that there is a way. And so that when they do get in these offices, that they don't feel overloaded or they don't feel all that stress, whatever it may be, going in as a new employee. Dave, it looks like you got a question there.
Up, you're muted, Dave.
You're still muted.
There it goes.
Thank you. Hey, you guys, wonderful to have you. My question is, in your whole farm planning, do your producer clients measure input reduction outcomes, diesel fuel, fertilizer application, organic nitrogen, on and on? Is that economic assessment part of the ball game?
We don't go into that as much as other than in generality, just saying, if you're just doing one pass across a field where you used to do three, obviously you're going to have conservation in energy use. So in a roundabout way, we do. It would be nice to have a tool where we plug in all this stuff and we're going to say, this is how much energy you've saved. We do have a tool that shows how much nutrients you've reduced from reaching a stream and how much sediment you've reduced reaching the stream. We have a pollution calculator that we do that for every practice that Hunter and I do in our watersheds. Honestly, I wish NRCS would do that with all their federal programs too. Hunter and I do it if we use federal programs in our watersheds, but we can actually put a value on how much soil, how much water improvements they're doing with that. And then as far as like return on investment, we can run those ideas about how much it costs to put corn and soybeans and fertilizer on an acre. And if you're only getting 60 bushel return, compared to that by seeding it down to native grasses and giving $300 an acre guaranteed return each year. So in those piecemeal things we can do. It would be kind of nice to but I think we'd have to hire 5 more staff members to keep up with all that, with just the number of people we're working with.
Well, some of those ideas, I think, and I'll let somebody else in, but, we need to get those into the conservation features in that next farm bill. And, having the two of you now 2 or 3 times with us and the rich work you're doing, it is so vital that those messages come beyond those of us on this thinking like a watershed meeting, but where decisions are made about the great return on resources because of what you're doing, and try to improve the features of our about farm bill. So I'll stop. Thank you.
Thanks, David. And you still have more, and I want to see it. So it was a good question, couple of good questions about, are you NRCS employees, contractors, staff, or how that works? We all want you in our counties, and we need to know how to do that. And then Cornelia had the best line of the whole thing. What wonderful work you are doing, and just an understated wow. Okay.
So 22 years ago when I started, there were 4 employees in our office. We're up to about 11 now. 6 of those have been district employees. And that's what Hunter and I are. We're district employees. We are what we consider full-time temporary employees. I've been a full-time temporary employee for 22 years, which means we have to go out and get grants, write grant proposals to fund our position in the first place so that we can help farmers do this, which I think is just the most upside down way of doing things. When we've got so much work to do, we have to still take time to just make sure that we're here. But I've also been told if you're doing a good job, the money will come. So we haven't had a problem getting money. But all those other district employees, those are all grant based. We've got probably 4 different ways we get district employees hired. We just hired a fine young guy. He's going to be a technician working for designs and stuff on bioreactors and saturated buffers, Riley Wilson. That is because of Hunter's Watershed Project. They wrote in the Hunter's Watershed Project funding for a technician. I mean, so now we don't have enough employees out. We see that farmer and we know we want to talk to them about cover crops. We run out there, get them off the combine there, wait till they get to the end of the field and let their grain out. They say, oh, there's the government truck, there's Neil and Hunter. They hop out and they say, what do you got for me today? I said, all I got today for you is to sign an application. We're going to talk about cover crops in January. I don't want to take much time of your day, but we got to get this. If we don't have an application, we aren't going to have funding. You have to have an application and you have to meet these deadlines, and that's just the way it is. And like I said, you have to have those people willing to put that application in front of the farmer and explain these are the different programs. Their eyes are glazing over if we just lay a spread of different program applications out there. And so that's our job. I mean, we're project coordinators. We're coordinating with farmers, with the contractors, the whole everybody. We're coordinating it. That's a perfect name for what we do. Whoever came, I can't coin that phrase. That came before me, but project coordinator. That is what we do, and that's how we're successful. And this is our troop. You can't think I will put this group of people up against any county in the nation as far as willingness to have empathy for their farmers, a desire and a passion for the environment, for the quality of living in their community, their water, soil health. I've recruited a lot of people to come on board, and we're looking for those positive people with a desire and a passion for what we're doing. And like I said at the beginning of the program, my job is to ignite that passion and that spark. And sometimes it's pretty tough. You got a lot of stuff going on. You might have some personal things going on. Kurt Haft was one of my DCs a few years ago. He said, when you come through that door, make sure that nobody knows that you got a bad day, because that does nothing but bring everybody down. You're coming in here, we're going to get work done. And that powerful synergy that we've created in this office. And that's how we get NRCS to come help. Like Hunter said, we're willing to jump in there, but keeping that positive attitude and enjoyment. And honestly, this year is going to be a great summer. We're going to have our biannual awards luncheon. We're going to hand out probably, 15 awards to different families throughout the county. Talk about a rewarding day of having these people who you've helped help their land come to receive an award for doing the right thing. I mean, yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful career. I've told my interns and people I've mentored, you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And I wonder what work would be, because I haven't found a day of work yet here.
So these are our soil and water commissioners. These are basically what we would say are our bosses, but they are by no means very bossy. They do anything that we need to improve what we're trying to do. They're all ears, they're all help. They're here to do whatever we can to move that ball down the field, just like that whole field staff is. They're nothing but open arms and open ears. We had a commissioner meeting today, and one of them is actually a conservation agronomist at our local co-op, and so to get him out of the field and get him in the office for half hour, 45 minutes obviously shows how important this is to them. And lastly, obviously our podcast, we put the link in there. Like we said at the beginning, this was something that we wanted to put out there for an informational piece. It's by no means something we wanted to get a lot of clicks. We weren't trying to go famous. We weren't trying to get any sort of monetary amount or anything like that. It was all just to be informational and get that information out there. As folks are sitting in the combine, as they're in the planter, taking long road trips, whatever it has been. It's been an absolute blast. We've definitely had some ups and downs with it as far as the technology. We actually tried recording here an episode last week and thought we had it all fine and dandy, and actually got zero audio. And so if you know what a podcast is, that's kind of important. But nonetheless, you just keep moving forward and make the best of it. And it's crazy. We've actually have listens from from 8 countries. Actually, it was 24 states, and since then it's grown. We've actually been in 32 different states now, and a little over 1,200 listeners between Spotify and Apple Music. And so that's pretty cool that we're getting that many views, that many listens, and we only hope to increase that and get that word out about the programs, about how we can do the practices, how we can get that outreach and stuff like that. And so it's been nothing but absolute blast to try to do. It's just like coming to work every day or coming to fun every day. You can't even call it work. And so it's been an absolute a joy to go on and do this.
Hunter knows I'm not very techy, so I had heard a podcast, but when we sat down to do the first one, we thought, well, how long should it be? How long? And we thought, well, I don't know, 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And all of a sudden, it was an hour, and I was like, oh, well, that's good. Well, now that's kind of our norm, as we do an hour. So, and we kind of focus them on a different topic each time, but it is a lot of fun. And it's kind of neat because I'm scrolling through YouTube, pops up, and here Hunter and I pop up in there. So I got to take an hour out and listen to what we said. And so it's a lot of fun, and it's a learning tool. What we told our agency people is, and they love them too. And what's nice is if we have some new project coordinators around the state. You know, we've been doing this for a few years, so we've can't say that we've always done everything right. We've made mistakes, and we talk about those too. And so this is just a learning tool for everyone.
So we'll close with that. Appreciate you guys taking the time and listening to us. Obviously, we went a little longer than we were hoping to, but when you only have 25 slides, you think it won't take that long, but then you start getting on different tangents and whatnot, and you get pretty excited about what we've been doing. So appreciate you guys having us on here, and hopefully we can answer a few questions for you before we get signed off.
Yeah, I'll just echo everybody's comments about all your great works. As you know, we're big fans of yours and have been for the last couple of years. I just wanted to bring up something about, like, you guys are just doing this great effort with all volunteers. I mean, it's a voluntary program. Do you really think that this can be duplicated throughout the whole state, or do you think that some kind of speed signs might have to be put up in order for others to come on board? I mean, you know, everybody's saying that it's only going to work. We're not going to have any regulations, and this is only going to work and it's working. Well, it's definitely working in Howard County, but it doesn't seem to be working very many other places in our state. So, what are your thoughts? Do you think that?
Honestly, it comes down to people. You need to hire the right people. you have to find. I've always said, give me someone that's got ambition, work ethic, and a desire to learn, and I'll show them my programs. I'm not all keen about just because you got a degree in biology or a degree in conservation or a degree. Hunter's got a fantastic degree in conservation, but he was working here the entire time he was going to college, so it made his experience so much greater. But give me those people that have those experiences, whether they're in banking or marketing or whatever, that enthusiasm and positive people with energy. That's how you drive this stuff. That's how we make things happen. So unfortunately, it's going to take people, and you need to get those people out there. We need more watershed projects in the state. That's key. Howard County has been famous in the state for having watershed projects. We started in the 90s with the Beock Trout Stream project. Frank Moore was one of our first environmental specialists. I kind of took after him. I've been here. He was there before me and then me, so that's been us. And then Hunter's been on board for going on 9 years now. Consistency, that's another key. Finding people with those local contacts to work in the office. I recruit as many local people as I possibly can. Riley, that we just recruited, he grew up in Cresco, went to college at UNI, ended up in Des Moines for a couple of years. We recruited him. He came back to his community. He loves it here. He's happy to be back here. So right there, that's one of the things. So recruitment, retention is important. I tell you what, environmental specialists, project coordinators, we have the largest turnover. You would not believe how many fantastic young people like Hunter that I've met in my 22 years who couldn't hack it. I mean, it's stressful not knowing if you're going to have health insurance or if you're going to get a project awarded or a grant funded for your position. And a lot of people leave, and that's so sad. We lose them to a lot of agencies. Yeah.
That's exactly what we talked about at the Farm Summit that I was sharing with you earlier.
Mhm.
Is people don't want to work for $25,000 a year, and they get them started. They have a good person, and then boom, they're gone within 6 months.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Go back to those questions. We could do like a little rapid fire. Or try to get those questions up. We have our chat thing. I'm going to answer some questions really quick. Yes, we are housed in the NRCS office here in Cresco, the USDA building, which I think is important. We have access to all the farm programs. We have access to all the databases of the farmers, all their land that they operate. It would be very difficult not to be in a USDA building and do what we do.
The podcast, Christine, if we could get a recipient list on an email chain of some sort, we can send both our presentation PDF along with a couple other nice attachments that we weren't able to put in, as well as a link to our podcast as well.
Who writes our paychecks? The Soil and Water District. So that money for mine originally comes from the EPA, goes to the Iowa DNR, Iowa Section 319 Water Bureau, goes to IDLES, then comes to the district. Hunters comes from IDLES, the Water Quality Initiative, comes to the district, and then the district writes our checks.
The soil testing, this is actually our CSP program in a nutshell. That's what's so important about that CSP program is the Haney test is incorporated to pretty much every single CSP contract that we have. And so doing those baseline soil tests and then continuing them every year as they're improving and doing these conservation practices.
Extra funding for water samples. For Hunter's water samples, we go to the Howard County Experimental Farm, give us a grant so that we can get those done. In my watershed, I have a water bureau, or I have a water monitoring plan. So if we add a site, it's got to be approved a year in advance. So we have some restrictions there.
The application of cover crops, we kind of hit on it real quick. We do not provide the seeding applications. That's all contractors. So whether a farmer is going to drill it himself, he's going to contract someone to drill it on. they can contact an airport or a company that flies it on. There's also a couple folks now that are doing drones, but it's just like any of our other conservation practices. They are privately contacting contractors. We have a master list that we can provide to them, but we do not directly line that up for them.
One really neat thing is this last year, they made some improvements out at our local airport, which is right outside our office. We can hear all the cover crop planes taking off right from our office right when we're in the midst of writing applications for new people for the next year. But they did some improvements out there with concrete and all, so that they can be loading 3 planes at a time and fueling a plane, and those planes are just rotating out. We've got a couple different companies that come in and they spend a week or 2 at a time, and they camp out. They bring their campers and they just stay because we got so much business. And we were visiting with them this last year, and they're like, "What are you guys doing up here?" Everybody talks about Howard County. They got to go up there with all their equipment and all their planes and stuff. And and it's not just the Cresco Airport. We've got in the southern part of the county, they fly out of New Hampton. They're flying out of Osage. So we're covering it all around the county. The drone thing, that's a new thing that's kind of coming on board. We got a couple guys that are doing the drones. With that, we're using the winter camelina and radish. Someone asked about our favorite cocktail of cover crop. Honestly, cereal rye with some radish and turnips in there, I think is pretty adequate. You're covering some different resource concerns with that. So that was our rapid fire with the chat questions. So open it up if you have any other questions.
I think you got most of those in very quickly. Christine, where are we on time? And do we have any last burning issues? You're going to send out the Hunter's and Neil's info, right?
Oh yeah, I always include that along with the YouTube link, and if all goes as planned, I'll try to get that completed maybe tomorrow, a bit before the end of the week. I usually have it within a few days that I send it out to everybody that's registered. And I also will include the previous links, which are to the podcast, and I will make their emails available. And if it's okay with everybody that registered, which I think it is, I will give you those emails so that you guys can put the people who probably be interested in being on your podcast list.
And we do love taking our road on the show. So if there's any events coming up or conferences where you guys are a wide group of people that have a lot of different contacts, we're more than happy to accommodate giving a presentation at an event also.
Well, I'm certain that you're probably going to be receiving a few more awards. I know that the Isaac Walton League is always has you top on our radar. I don't know if we're allowed to give it to the same people a couple years in a row.
Well, being you brought up awards, last year Hunter was awarded the Outstanding Watershed Coordinator of the Year, and he got to that level of achievement a lot faster than I did, because I think it was 2 years prior to that I received that award. So he's coming up in my rearview mirror pretty quickly here. So I think I did a good job of mentoring.
You did. You guys are rock stars, and we're really thrilled to have you be a part of the state and to do what you're doing. Like we said, if we could just clone you guys, like they're cloning some of these animals, let's clone them and have them